Fitness Pro Mentor community, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm here with my good friend and someone that blows my mind every single time we talk, Mr. Charlie McMillin. Charlie, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing. How are you?
I'm also doing. Busy day over here at the gym, but you know how that goes with working with clients. It's a lot of work and fun at the same time.
It is indeed.
So if anyone's listening to this, Charlie and I are going to just jump right to it. Charlie has done several episodes in the past talking about some of the research he's been up to. He's got an incredible history and has been doing a lot to give back. And today we're going to be expanding on the conversation of your PEX system, gauges, and some other cool stuff you've been doing in your training.
Sounds reasonable.
Cool, man. Do you want to start with this crazy image that you sent me right before we started, along with a few others?
Sure. So this is a we can call it a dynamometer. It's basically just a strain gauge, a load cell that measures tension. This particular device measures tension. It's called it's a climbing company called Rock. I can't remember the name of Rock Exotica. And they make a load cell that you basically measure strength of ropes. Or if you're loading a rope, how much load is actually on the rope. And it's pretty cool. It's not highly sensitive because obviously it's measure pretty significant loads in terms of rope, what kind of loads that a rope might be handling, climbing or something like that. But it does have immediate feedback and also it's on my iPhone. So it's a little small, and it also reads the opposite directions, the directions some of the graphene types of software that force gauges read. It's reading the opposite direction. So basically the screen kind of scrolls from left to right, from right to left. It's moving that way. Screen is going from right to left, and so from left to right. because of that, what I did here was this is I think it was on. I hooked it on leg extension. I have a Cybex loaded leg extension, and so I use a daisy chain to hook it on the input arm of the Cybex leg extension, and I basically hook it through two of the loops of the daisy chain, and I can pick whatever range I want to measure the force in. But you and I have talked about the use of the perceived effort continuum scale for isometrics. Some people might be familiar with it. Did a whole series of videos in the pandemic before lockdown, and we're asking me, what am I going to do? And fellow professionals mostly the videos for. There were some normal people also, but in any case, I showed three different versions of types of force choreographies, if you want to call it that, in which I was trying to show people how you can do these types of scenarios, with using floor or using any kind of barrier, sling, whatever it was. And so what this particular picture is showing is doing the leg extension with the load cell on it in a stepwise fashion. And what that means is the way that I set up choreography 10 seconds at a level 1 effort scale. Then 8 seconds at a level 2 effort, 6 seconds at a level 3 effort, 4 seconds at a level 4 effort, and then 2 seconds at a level 5 effort. Level 5 is maximum. And Brandon showing you an old version of the scale, which works fine. And I might have a better one. I'm going to step out of the screen for a second here. A more updated one might not
Vintage
either.
scaling system.
Oh well. In any case. There we go. So the stepwise actually is this. And people can kind of let me move this back a little bit. I never get that right. So level one effort, very low effort. 2 is low. 3 is moderate effort, obviously. 4 is high effort, and 5 effort. So basically spending 10, 8, 6, 4 and 2 seconds at each one of those levels. And you're seeing what the output is in terms of force through the leg extension system. And then the ramp is the second where it's much more, and just ignore the colors on here, but it's more of a ramp fashion like this one over here. Same kind of scenario as this. Don't have to worry about the little descriptors down here. They're having to do with repetitions for the actual scale. But in any case, that's a ramping. So those are what those two things are doing. And I did that because I use a lot of different type of force gauges daily, and it could be the Rock Exotica one, which is it's decent. It's not as sensitive as I would like it. I don't love to read out. Clients have a hard time seeing it on the phone than they do, say, for instance, a laptop screen or a tablet screen. But you know, it's usable, handy. It's something that you can travel with really easily, and because of the iPhone, it makes it kind of user-friendly in that case.
So I have a super simple question that's maybe a step before we jump into all this other stuff. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you with this is you mentioned just working with clients, right? You mentioned like the visual reference, they have a hard time seeing it on the screen. I'm wondering with how you've been using the perceived effort continuum scale, when you're using it with clients, are you using like a visual laptop and having the visual reference be feedback for them as well, along with, yeah.
So there's two things. There's the PEX, which is perceived effort continuum scale, and then there's the PEX C. We're just going to call them that from here on out. It makes it easier. And that's the one for isometrics. Okay. The PEX has been validated. I did it for my dissertation and successfully did that. Back in early December. But the research that went into that, we successfully validated that scale. That is used for repetitions. That's actually used for dynamic exercise. The PEX C is used for isometric exercise. The thing that I really want the visual feedback about force are the isometrics. I want the client to be able to see what their output is in terms of force. And then use the PEX scale to basically like a conductor would to basically guide what I want out of them. And you can use any time signature on this that you want to. The 5-point scale works really well. A clearly delineated midpoint, a maximum, obviously a minimum. Can't have zero output. So in terms of effort, so one is very low effort. But I do want them, and I as a trainer want to see everybody who's done isometric clients. You want to know how hard are they actually pushing. And if you spent any time with isometrics levels other than 100%, then it's nice no. Especially if you're guiding isometrics and you're asking them to strategically change the amount of force they're trying to develop. It's nice to know that they're actually doing that. Now your hand is a fine tool, but it doesn't provide the feedback to them necessarily in real-time feedback. So when using the PEX scale, I typically don't use the computer except when I'm doing it myself. What I use is if I don't have a if you want to call it analog scale with me, like a dial scale. You can pull up one of those style scales. If I don't have either one, the rotation or whatever. So if I don't have a scale like that, then yes, I would end up using the computer. Or if I want to actually log the amount of force that they're outputting, I want a record of that, then I would use the computer, or I would write it down off the analog scale. Anything coming up? Yeah, I mean that's I don't use that one very much anymore. But so the exercise, you have those pictures that I sent you with the rotation exercises. That has it.
Nope. Charlie sent me a few images. There we go.
There you go. Okay, so what I've done on this is a Cybex seated rotation exercise. It's pelvis on trunk rotation. And I actually have it locked down. And what I did was I replaced the Kevlar belt that was on there, the belt with a cable. And then a cable that was shorter. And then I hooked the luggage scale, basically. Samsonite luggage scale. Costs very much money. It's got pretty good. It goes up to 80 pounds, whereas a lot of the fishing scales only go up to 50 pounds. And I have it so that basically they're running through the Tech C, the 10-8-6-4-2, or if it's ramping 10 seconds from 1 to 2, 10 seconds from 2 to 3, 5 seconds from 3 to 4, 5 seconds from 4 to 5 being their max. The nice thing about the Samsonite scale is it has a peak-to-break dial on it, so it will stay at the maximum unless you set it back out again. But that's a nice thing because if they do let's say we do the sequence of isometrics, the first isometric is 10-8-6-4-2 stepwise. We can see their level 5, what their maximal force was on that. And what's interesting to see is, can people generate maximal force over a 30-second period better, higher number, when they're stepwise increasing versus ramping increasing? I've yet to see anybody be able to generate more stepwise than ramping. And it's interesting because the way that I typically do things in training people is the ramping follows the stepwise. I mean, for no great reason, but it allows me to see the ramp wise exceeding when they get to a level 5 at the end of the isometric, at the end of 30 seconds, that level 5, that MVIC at that level 5 is higher than it was at the stepwise, which is interesting. So trying to increase your force and then maintain it for 10 seconds, and then increase it and maintain it for 8, increase it and maintain it for 6, increase it and maintain it for 4, increase it and maintain it for 2. That last second in that repetition or in that isometric, the maximal force output there is less than if I do 10, 10, 5, 5, a continual ramp. What is interesting, though, is the experience of the client in terms of their effort when they report it is harder to do the ramping, the increase, than it is to do it stepwise and maintain it and bump it up and maintain it. So you can show, if you want to show, go backwards and let's look at one of the other stepwises. So I mean, might as well do this while it's there. So what I've done on this is I'm basically normalizing. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a maximum, an MVIC, maximal voluntary isometric contraction, and I started at 10 seconds. Now, in most of the literature, and what I had to do for basically the muscle tests in my when I was doing the validation for my scale in the dissertation, is I did a 5-second isometric for the normalization process. Okay, that's typically because what you do is you basically ramp up. You give them about 2 seconds to get to their max. You have them spend like 2 to 3 seconds at their max, and then they kind of bleed off for a second. That's typically the way that most people would test for max isometrics these days, the majority of the literature. Some people do 3 seconds. 5 seconds kind of works a little bit better because they're not having to get to their max quite as quickly. So there's a little bit of ramp there. But what you're seeing is you're seeing the max, and this is also on the leg extension. And this is with a different unit. This is actually with this is called the Torbal. This is a load cell that is independent of the actual force gauge itself. So it's a load cell that runs back to the force gauge, which then runs to the computer. And it hooks up similarly to the daisy chain that the Rock Exotica one does. And so what you're seeing is the max for 5 seconds. And then what you're seeing me do a ramp up and then a ramp down. Okay? So that's kind of what you're seeing on there. And that's 30 seconds each direction. Starting at 30 seconds, maxing, getting up to level 5 at 60 seconds, and then trying to bleed it off. You can see how hard it is to decrease the force from a maximum. I'm trying to make that slope look exactly the same way as the upslope. I'm trying to make the downslope look the same way as the upslope. Doing that, having clients learn how to bleed off their force is a very interesting and weird thing to have people to try to do. And you can see, as much as I've done these things, that's about as good as I get, right? Because it's about timing, because it's about, it's all about timing and timing your amount of force and predicting like where you need to be, maybe 10 seconds. You're constantly going, okay, well, I've got only 20 seconds left. I've got to be at this level. It's a weird and really cool way to get clients to really control their force output, both in terms of increasing and decreasing it. And to know what it holding on to a little bit of force output is, whereas a lot of our clients may experience this, right? They don't even know sometimes that they're not relaxed.
Right.
Well, when you're bleeding off your force and you can see what it is, you can kind of see the difference between nothing and even a little bit of something. Right. So that's a ramp up and a ramp down. A lot of people who followed me on Facebook over the years have seen me do some of these things. This is for force. This isn't EMG, which I've also shown in the past. Go back and let's look at another one. Okay, so this is all three of the types of isometrics. So that's me doing a normalization. I'm doing the max first, and then stepwise, and then totally relaxing at level 5. Then the ramp, and then totally relaxing at level 5. And then this is called pulse-wise. You haven't seen this yet. So this is, I am doing split-second contractions at level 1 for 10 of them at a level 1 effort. And then 8 split-second contractions, and then relaxing at a level 2, 6 at level 3, 4 at level 4, and then 2 at level 5. And so that's what you're seeing there. And you can see, like, I'm not getting great target. I'm getting some pretty good targets there, but it's a hard thing to do, right? And the level 1 pulses should look like where I am at the level 1 stepwise. That gives you an idea of my level 1 effort stepwise. And if you look across to the 4th graph over there, you see the pulses, and you can see how I kind of overshoot it at the beginning, right? And then the level 2, it's close. It's not bad, right? Level 3. But you see I do a pretty decent job. Those level 4s, I'm kind of, I don't know what's going on there, but either on the stepwise or on the pulses. But that kind of shows you all three. And this is, again, is with the Torbal scale.
This is super interesting. I would say, since you've introduced it to me, I've been trying to implement it, and our trainers have been trying to implement it in here. And the biggest hurdle we have is without a visual reference set up, which is tough because we do have a public setting. Like, we don't have the same autonomy to keep things set up like you do. We have to set up scales, but being able to see things makes a huge difference. Like, looking at your pulses here, I imagine you're watching the graph on your computer, because those numbers, or you're just awesome with this control, because those numbers at the low, the 1 and the 2, they're so close to the same. Like, that's an incredible level of control to be able to pulse resistance in that same amount of force. That's just incredible.
So go to the, and so like I said, for clients, I rarely use the computer. What I instead use is go to it's probably going to be forward. It's another seated rotation.
No, not this one.
And I do either. Well, here we go. So this is stepwise up and down. This is, again, with the Torbal scale. And you can see on the way down, when I'm working down from level 5, right, you can see how, like, I overshoot the drop off, and I have to get back up there because I've gone too low, right? It's too much of a drop off. And so I kind of go, oh gosh, I gotta bring it back up. Does that make sense? So that's stepping up to level 5 at each level, and then stepping back down to basically 0, but you see back down to level 1. All right, and then the normalization is just showing you what my max is. So you can see that even though I'm waiting 15 seconds after doing the max, I'm not getting, over a 30-second period, I'm not getting my max up to whatever that is, like I think it was 460 is what my max was on that. That's in pounds on the leg extension.
Oh, I thought this was rotary torso. I was going to say you're doing 460 rotary torso. You're a monster. This is incredible.
So go to another, and we might just get there by running through it. Okay, so this is different software and a different gauge. Okay, so there's a ramp up, and this is actually on my seated row. And so you can kind of see, this is a one-arm seated row and this is just the ramp going from 1 to 5. So it's 10, 10, 8, 10, 10, 10, 5, 5, 10 seconds from level 1 to 2, 10 seconds 2 to 3, 5 seconds 3 to 4, and 5 seconds 4 to 5. Okay, and then completely bowing out of it. So it's a 30-second long isometric.
It's pretty intense looking, man. Like the smoothness on that line is crazy.
This is one of my digital Chatillon scales. And with their software, which is this next gen software, which is kind of junk. All of these things, anytime you start getting into software, it's not only like hard setup and everything else, it's like something always goes wrong. You plug it in and the port that it's reading is a different COM port. Like the communication port it flips to some other number, and then you got to spend 30 minutes trying to figure out what's going on. Is another reason why I veer towards the analog with clients.
Yeah, we actually
it's easier to show this, even though we're not seeing the changes over. This allows us to see the change over time, whereas if I show you the picture of the analog scale, we're not seeing that. We can see it with the EMG, though. All right, go forward. Or change pictures. So that's pulse-wise with the next-gen software. And you can see I'm overshooting those looks like level 2s. I'm not doing great on the seated row. So that's the one-arm seated row.
It's still pretty good because, you still have that consistency and you can see it elevate when you try. Like, yes, there's a few jumps around. It looks like the number 2, but it's like, it's pretty good, man.
Really weird, too. Like, I bowed out on one of those pulses. All right. And that's stepwise seated row, one-arm seated row. And, you can kind of see how that goes. Now, the reason these time signatures are what they are at each level is because 10 seconds at level 1, no big deal, right? 8 seconds level 2, no big deal. I worked through a lot of different time signatures. Anything more than 4 seconds at a level 4, that is a difficult thing to accomplish, and still expecting to get, everything you got on level 5 and actually have it be a discernible difference than the level 4. And I will tell you about the PEC scale in a little bit and what these levels came out for the dynamic exercise. But, in my head, what I envisioned for this was 10% at level 1, 25 at level 2, 50% of MVIC at level 3, 75 at level 4, and then 100% at level 5. That was what I envisioned. And that's also what I envisioned for the PEC scale, the dynamic scale. It didn't come out like that, but it did come out really consistent in another way. So, and I'll kind of tell you that, and you can read my dissertation for that information too. But so if you miss it in here, okay. So there's, you see, so that's what I'll have set up. But go ahead and go to the next one.
Go.
Okay, well, do the EMG. Well, yeah, here, that one's good. Stay with that. The EMG's behind it. Okay, so now I actually mounted these. I made some brackets that hold onto the guide rails, and they're pop on, pop off brackets. They're lighting brackets that hold lights on, framing for like sounds or for stage sets and stuff like that. And it took me a long time to figure out how to do it. But I did, and that's a plaque. It's like a fishing plaque that you put like your little like trophy perch on. It's not very big, obviously. And then I've got an analog scale. So that's a Chatillon analog dynamometer. And you see what I have it, and you were asking, this might work a little bit better for you too, Brandon, is I actually have it so that I have longer pins, that the pin is actually pushing up. So now it's set on compression, and the pin is pushing up into the scale.
That's smart.
And I can move the actual holder, stand, whatever you want to call it, anywhere I want to on those guide rails. And I've also got an extender for the gauge, so I can kind of put it anywhere I want to. So if I want them in slight rotation, I can do that.
The that wooden plaque, you purchased that? That's something that someone can buy?
No,
With
I
that wooden
purchased it.
board?
I made all that stuff.
Oh, you made it all. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah.
So when are you opening your store?
Yeah, right. One thing I learned from Purvis and everybody well, maybe Tom will be more successful than I ever would be, but one of the things I learned is that inventing something for fitness, I mean, the amount of time you put into it on the front end and then the amount of cost that you typically put out, good luck.
I got you.
Know?
Okay, cool. Well, this is a super creative setup here. It looks really sharp and simple too. So you can
Right.
just you can just pop that right off the guy rods if you want to do dynamic exercise as well.
You got it. Just pop it right off.
That's cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah, works really well. So here's an EMG of the trunk flexion. Okay, so this is it's just all I did was rectify the signal. I didn't have time to actually go through and filter it or do anything else. But that is my max. And this is, do you have a picture of my VR1? I think I didn't send you one, but you might have, you were asking about it. You were saying with the PVC, this is one of them.
If you want to get chatting, I can see if I can find it in our chat stream.
Let me see whether I also have one. I'm going to have to put on my glasses for this.
Which machine was it? The flexion?
It's the VR1 crunch and extension, basically.
Oh gosh, that photo I think is epically old in my.
Yeah, it's probably going back some ways. Well,
but it's the VR1 with the arms out in front, where your arms are extended.
Right, so you can do Tom's restraint in the plane.
Here, I'll find it fast.
And basically, I set it up so that you can. Anyway, I'm not going to be able to find it, but I got it. Basically. This is the VR1.
This one? Right here. I got it.
Yeah. And so I have the dynamometer set up with some PVC tubing, and it goes on top of the handles. And then you basically push down on the PVC, and it's got the Samsonite gauge in it, and it allows you to see how much force you're pushing down on that. I knew I had I know I've got pictures of it. There it is. Got it. All right, I'm sending it right now. Hopefully you can see this.
Everyone stay tuned. More media coming. Oh yeah. This is a Charlie system right here and a half.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the VR1. Basically, it's right in front of the client, and it was that machine that Brandon just showed a little while ago. And so basically, they can see their output with pushing down on it, right? So what I have, where this originally started was I would have, if anybody remembers RTS and Tom talking about, these amazing ways of describing things where you talked about restraint to and restraint in the plane and ways to change the force or the muscles involved, depending upon how you wanted to use it. So I was just using the friction provided by the handles, the rubber on the handles. And I would tell clients, okay, on the eccentric, I want you to increase the load on that on the way back, right? So they bend forward, right? And then on the way back, I wanted them to push down. I wanted them to push down on the handle so that the eccentric was higher load, higher resistance than the concentric. And I was like, that's great, but how much? I don't really know. What are they doing? What I want them to do? I mean, I can look on their face, but So I made this thing that slides on top of the handles. I can just pull it on and pull it off, and basically they're pushing down on it, so they can do the isometrics, and then they can do the dynamic exercise. I don't even change anything up, right? Use the same device for that. On the isometrics, that's what you're seeing on the EMG. You're seeing me do a max first, and then you're seeing me do stepwise is the second, if I call it graph, the second signal that's represented there, electrical signal there, and then activity that goes up, and then that's ramp wise, and then that's pulse wise.
And that's the shoving down. That's the shoving down on this system. Is that what that is?
That's only shoving down, not forward.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Okay. I also took an EMG today of what happens after they shove forward when they're pushing down and coming back, and you can see when they're doing dynamic exercise, you can see how much higher it is when they're pushing down, so that you're seeing that the eccentric is loading more. Now, electrical activity does not equate to force, but it associates to force. Certainly during isometrics it does, and you can actually play around with the signal enough and change some things so it actually, even on dynamic exercise, comes real close.
That's awesome.
Problems with EMGs with muscles moving underneath the skin. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that you have to consider there, but it gives an idea. All right, these are ways for me to know what's going on inside of them.
Right. So I have a nerdy, simple question, and then maybe a bigger one. The Samsonite scales, are you just getting the one that's got the 80-pound limit, or are you getting some bigger one?
The 80-pound limit is what I use. That's all the Samsonite goes up to. If I need more, I use the Chatillon scale.
Got it. Yeah, I definitely snapped one of my...
I really need a lot. The digital Chatillon scales go up to 500 pounds. The one I have goes up to 500 pounds.
Gotcha.
That load cell, one of the load cells I have goes up to something like 5,000 pounds. So we're not going to have to worry about that. But that requires hooking it through the computer.
And just really quick practical question, because I had someone ask me this earlier, and I was thinking this might be the one. Hold on, I'm going to open this. I have the Samsonite luggage scale up here. Do you replace the luggage hook pin with a carabiner, or do you just use it as is?
Oftentimes what I've done is on that, what you see now is as is on that one I sent you a second ago, but I've replaced that with a piece of it's basically string, it's climbing string, so it's super, super, super heavy. Gotcha. That one's got the hook on it too, but basically I pull off the hook and then I use string to tie it to whatever I'm doing. It just depends on how much, because that's a set distance, right? Unless you want to bend that hook, which you can do, or it's easier to bend if you heat it up. But you can do that, or you can replace it with something smaller. There's it goes through a little piece of metal that has a hole drilled in it that I just use that to attach a rope to or whatever.
Perfect. Now, I'm just wondering, I know most of the clients you have been with you for quite a long time. Like, you haven't had any new clients come in while you've introduced this system, have you?
The new clients are if you want to call them that, they're the patients that I have in the research study that I'm running. Okay. So yeah. So I basically right now I'm doing the kind of validation for the PEC-C, but only with stepwise and only with basically anterior shoulder muscles. So it's all of these things are typically done before dynamic exercise, and I do it as a potentiation activity. I do it as a warm up, so it kind of does both of those things, preparation for activity, in the study, I'll have people do it, but I'm not measuring it except with the before the chest press. Right. Okay. So on the protocol that I wrote for the study that I'm running, so I'm running a study at the University of Maryland with people who have prostate cancer who are undergoing proton treatment, and we're using the same protocol that I designed for the Lyme study that was published in 2015. The difference with this is there's a couple differences. On the PEC scale, which is this one. This was actually from the Lyme study, and you can see without the glare, sorry about that, that level 4 and level 5 are red. That meant we're stopping this when they report a level 4 effort. So they stop doing reps when they report a level 4. In the proton treatment study, they're stopping when this is the proton one. The Lyme one was they stop when they report a level 3. Sorry, this one is similar to the proton one. And they stop when they report a level 4. So it's done at a little higher effort. And also we do this preparation for activity prior to, where they're doing stepwise for the tissue that's relative to each thing. Now, I have what I got for the study was a Cybex chest press, and it is a phenomenal machine. It has the whole like 23-degree thing, but you hold it off the uprights to get that, where the force is kind of oriented 23 degrees to, you remember that whole deal. It was like the magic, force thing. So it's really cool for use of like if you or I were doing chest presses. But for the patients in the study, I don't have them pull it off of the stops because that would be too much. It's asking too much. But because it's got motion to be able to do that, and I didn't think about this well when I ordered it, it was still the best piece that I could get for the study, and it fit in the room. I'm in a tiny little room with 4 pieces of equipment in there that we do 5 exercises on. But at first, I was doing it with like I put 2 tennis balls on the handles, on the ends of the handles, and they would push the handles together. And then I was like, why don't I measure this? And so I made you probably saw it. It's in my dissertation. I made a scale for that out of PVC with the luggage scale. So I'm introducing it with new people in that.
So that's what I want to ask is so for most of the studies, I know you're not really going up to level 4. At the very beginning, you talked about for some of these studies that a 5-rep, 5-second maximal voluntary isometric contraction is kind of standard for baseline. I'm wondering for you with these patients and or clients, how soon and or quickly are you introducing up to a 1-rep max, like 100% effort, or are you?
So on the PEXI, I have no problem with them doing 2 seconds maximally. I won't do it the first day with them. Okay. But at the end of the first week, on the 3rd day, basically, of the protocol, I will have them do the stepwise with the PEXI up to level 5. Okay. So isometric, right? For the PEX scale, which is perceived effort continuum scale, the one for dynamic exercise, we don't go above a level 3. So the way that I designed the scale is, with Tom Purvis's help, was it's a momentary and predicted level of effort scale. So your traditional RPEs are basically you're not trying to predict the future of how you're going to feel on the next rep. That's what this one is. This is different than traditional RPEs that are out there, whether it's the Borg or the Omni or et cetera, et cetera. Number one, it's 5-point. There's only one other 5-point scale out there. And so it was 5-point. That was Tom's idea, because Tom was just like, look, like, number one, it needs to be odd numbers. Having 10, an RPE of 10 is kind of weird because there's no really clearly delineated midpoint on an even numbered scale. The other thing is that when you're working at levels of effort, like I was in the Lyme study, where you're really, really low in effort, it's hard to discern between, like, if you ask somebody on a 10-point scale, are you a 1 or a 2? That is a tough thing for people to kind of, what's the difference between a 1 or a 2 on a 10-point scale? So 5-point scale for that reason. Where was I going with this? So on this particular, when I changed it for the proton treatment study, they report it's momentary and predicted. So they're saying, okay, based on what I just did on this 5-point scale, I'm thinking about what the next one is going to be. So you're not reporting your effort in the last one. You're trying to predict your effort for the next one.
Right.
So if I pull this up again and you say, okay, level 3 is I can complete another repetition with some strain. That means, okay, I can do another one, but there's going to be some strain involved. Okay, when we keep going. If they say, I can do another one, but there's going to be a lot of strain. Well, what's the difference? Well, if you look at level 5 is I can't do another one. Right? So effectively, that idea of, hey, we're thinking about, the next one is what we did for safety reasons, which is the whole reason why I was asked to do the study at Maryland. Was we need to make sure that as people are going through several different forms of treatment, not just proton therapy, but other stuff, that we're adding an exercise, it's not going to influence their outcomes negatively.
Right.
So I don't know whether that answers your question, but
Well, I'm where I'm coming from a lot of this right now is I'm thinking real world application. Like I'm thinking it sounds real world application. Maybe more in a public training setting. I'm trying to teach my people here how to use this system with their parts of the system with all of our clients when appropriate. And it seems like a
Right.
really appropriate dosing. The visual hurdle I mentioned is a big thing. The other question that when I've talked about in even just our in-house study groups is, well, when is it safe to go to 100%? Because we do have a lot of 70 pluser type clients, and it's an interesting question. Like, should you
So
even?
if you're talking about, or if you're talking about dynamic exercise or isometrics, I think we have to frame it. I think we have to frame that, and then we have to talk about: are you talking about 100% effort? Are you talking about 100% in terms of some sort of an external variable that you're measuring?
Well, effort. That's where
Which
the isometrics.
which could relate, which should relate to each other, but not always, right? Like, um, one of the things that's important with the PEC scale to realize, and Tom obviously told me this really quickly, is in all likelihood that when you do this with people, that the place where the resistance is the greatest is probably the place that's going to inform their effort the most, right? So you're doing a seated row, and even though some machines have a decent drop off when you pull back, so at the end of the lifting stroke, you get to here, you might have a decent drop off. That's still the place that people typically are going to fatigue first, and because the resistance is still the greatest there relative to the moment arm to the shoulder. That's oftentimes what's going to inform their perceived effort the greatest,
Right.
right? So when we talk about like 100%, it's like, well, could they do another one in just a shorter range? Like that's a different version of, right? That's
Yeah.
used load. Like I don't what's 100%, right?
Well,
We're
this
talking
sounds
just
like
about.
this gets a little over top, but I mean, I was thinking about that Nautilus Nitro leg extension that I've got here, and how heavy it is on the lighter loads at full extension, right? If someone doesn't have like over 50 pounds on there, the cam, I don't want to say is useless, but the actual mass of the input arm is just ridiculous. So it would be the hardest at the top range where someone's going to have the lowest amount of force output. So I'm wondering where I was going with that is that would be the hardest, but is there a point where you would use this? It sounds ridiculous, but use this twice in a set, where it's like 100% here, and you're like, okay, cool. Now we're only going to go halfway. We're going to go 90 to 45. Let me know when we get to 100% here. Or,
I mean, you could, as long as you go. They would have to understand the scale well enough.
right.
I mean, you would have to have gone through, and they have a handle on that. Obviously, all of my clients at this point probably would be able to do that. One of the things that was really cool about the scale was, and if you read my article 3 in there, it talks about, I had a hypothesis going into this thing that it was going to be 10, 25, 50, 75, and 100%. Okay. And so in validating the scale, there were basically two concurrent variables that I was working with. I was working with EMG, and I was working with the weight that was chosen. Okay. So selected. Starting off with the very lightest weight the machine had to offer. They would do a rep, and then they would report to me where they were on the scale, right? Then I would add 5 pounds. They would do another rep, tell me where they were on the scale. And then I would keep adding 5 pounds, given adequate rest and all that other stuff. And so we worked our way from level 1 all the way up to level 5. Okay. And so with the EMG on them, basically what I did was and it was all normalized to their max based off of the standard muscle tests that are used in terms of normalizing EMG data. And basically what I'm looking for is there a correlation between an increase in EMG output and an increase in weight selected, right? That's the easiest way. And then does that match basically with what they're reporting is in terms of on the scale? So now that's how we can validate it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very smart. Yeah.
Okay, so I take the mean of the EMG signal, the mean of the maximum amplitude on the EMG signal for every rep for each level of effort, right? And then find out what that is for level 1, then find out what that is for level 2, find out what that is for level 3, level 4, and level 5. do the same thing. So if the seeded row starts at 10 pounds, then what I do is, let's just say they get up to like 30 pounds, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and those are all level 1, right? So 20 pounds, okay, ends up being their mean, right, for that. So mean level 1 effort, 20 pounds. On the EMG, it's however many, millivolts. And then what is it for level 2? What is it for level 3, level 4, and level 5? For weight selected, my hypothesis was it's going to be 10% of level 5 is going to be level 1. Level 2, 25% of level 5 is going to be level 2. Level 3, 50% of level 5 is going to be level 3. Level 4, 75% of level 5 is going to be level 4.
Makes sense.
So, and then obviously level 5 is 100%. It did not come out exactly to that, but level 3 came out exactly 50%. So
cool.
It was a clearly delineated midpoint. That was moderate. It was an estimated moderate level of effort. It was perfect. It was like 50 point. I mean, it was insane how close it was to 50. The numbers were, I think that it was like, it depends on whether we were doing the chest press or the seated row, but it was close to like 78, 79% for level 4. So I was off by 4% on that. And it was like 29%, 30% for level 2. So I was off by 5% for that. And then I think that level 1 ended up being like 12%.
So pretty close.
So now what does this mean? Well, it means that basically, instead of doing a 1 rep max, like if you look at all the chronic disease literature, which is the whole topic of this particular article in my dissertation is, if you look up all the literature on chronic disease and how to train people with chronic disease, they want you to do a percentage of 1 rep max. But you can't do a 1 rep max with a lot of people. So how are you supposed to know what that is? Well, some people are smart and they say, okay, well, we use a rating of perceived exertion. But with doing this, the validation project, one of the interesting things is, okay, if you take and you find out, you start off with the very lightest weight on the machine, and you have them go up, for instance, to the end of the range of level 2. So you stop, you find out what all the weights selected that were in range of level 1 and range of level 2, right? And then when they say that's a level 3, meaning I think the next one's going to be a level 3, basically you take the mean, the average of all the weights selected that were reported as a level 2, and you can take that's 30%, let's just say, and you multiply that by a certain factor to get to 50%. So you know what a moderate level of effort is without ever having to go there. You also can figure out what level 4 effort is. In other words, the weight chosen. So you can start off without like having to have somebody do a max and actually zero them in on 79% or 50% or 30% effort. I mean, you can obviously get the other percentages if you need to, working out the math, but
it's like the old 1 rep max thing and going backwards, except you're doing it the smarter way.
Right, and never having to go and figuring out. Yeah, I mean that's basically what the idea was. Okay, well, let's figure out what a moderate level of effort is or a low level of effort is without ever having to actually do a max.
Right, that's cool.
And so that way you can avoid those problems. So I mean that's and the risk of I can't take patients in a study and do 1 rep maxes with them.
Charlie, I know you have a client in a couple minutes, so I'm going to let you go in a minute here. But every time we talk, I always get way too excited. I already have 3 Samsonite scales in my Amazon bag thing ready to purchase. And I always have a million more questions. I want to keep going. But I want to just thank you for your time for this, man. This has been really a blast.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, I can, and if you want, I mean, we've done this before. I don't think anybody really pays attention to it. Maybe they do. But if you want, we can stick up the EMG of basically the restraint in the plane pushing down on the PVC as they're doing the eccentric on that flexion extension. And so we can kind of say, okay, see, this is what we're talking about. So if you wanted to load the eccentric more.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. That'd be cool.
Okay.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, and have fun with your client. Really appreciate your time today. This was a blast.
Thanks, man. Sorry it was so quick, and I'm a little kind of discombobulated, so I'm running all over the place today.
Well, everyone loved it. And anyone that's listening to this, if you're watching this live, there was a bit of an echo at the beginning. That was my fault. I pushed the wrong button, but I'll be putting up another version of this video, so it will be echo-free, I promise. Charlie, I'll talk to you real soon, sir.
All right, brother. Cheers.